Hey guys, it's your girl Matt Cox from MA Couture Crafting, and we will be talking about, can you see it? Pink Sand Beach Designs. They are in Torrance. They are a small design studio that is also open for purchasing fabric through Facebook. You can walk in. Lovely people. They have tons of designs. They're a design studio, and one of the designs that stood out to me was this guy right here. How cute is this? I am a tea girl. I love tea. I love to serve tea. I love to make things that have to do with tea. I love tea. So this is a teapot cozy. I made it in two different color stories. I made it the same way, but we have two different color stories. This one, of course, would be my favorite because it's what? A rainbow with some black and white stripes on the sides and all the things. This is the funky one. I struggled a little, but that's because I'm a beginning quilter, not because the directions were not pretty easy to follow. They really were. It's just the bottom is scary and it comes out fine, but it doesn't really look cute when I'm doing it. The bottom, And if I'm being honest, I didn't catch the fabric on the other side, so I tweaked the pattern just a little bit, and I'll tell you where I do that to make sure that that is all taken care of. When you are doing something for the first time and you want to gift it, or you think that you might want to gift it, or you want to make multiples, do one all the way through, start to finish. Don't do them in tandem. Do one start to finish, find out what works, find out what doesn't work, and then do the next one, which is what I ended up doing. I started off trying to do them at the same time, and I'm like, no, because you're just going to make the same mistakes at the same time. That's just not smart. So I completed the Cafe one, Mr. Cafe, and then I went ahead and did mine, which did come out much, much better. I am excited about these. These are cute, a great gift for your gals who love tea, or your gals or your guys who love tea. So many different options with the fabric. Again, easy to put together. And if you'd like to see, keep watching. All right, guys, bye-bye. Okay, so let's get into this. I am picking out my fabrics. I have some extra leftover stash that I'm using. I guess you can kind of say it's extra leftovers. I don't know. I don't know what's happening with my fabric collection right now, but we're doing the afternoon tea party pattern by Pink Sand Beach Designs, and let's go. So the first part is not difficult. It's just cutting the fabric. And this doesn't take a whole bunch of pieces, really, if I'm being 100% honest. I mean, you cut it down, you cut your pieces, and you don't need a ton of pieces. I think the first things that you do this large strip, and then you need like some rectangles that I think you can use a fat quarter for. You don't have to have a whole bunch of fabric to do this. And I really like the way it looks scrappy with the one that I'm keeping that is super funky looking. Like piece your stuff together. Don't be scared to play. I happen to have some of this leftover thermal batting from when I was doing the oven mitts. And so I figured this would be a good place to use it up. This is actually probably what it was intended for, stuff like this. So I cut out all of my pieces. I'm cutting out a little bit more. I cut out the pieces for both at the same time. However, at one point I just stopped working on the funky one just because I thought, I was starting to mess up stuff. And you can see, you take the batting, you sew the smaller piece to the larger piece, and that part really is genius so that you don't have so much bulk in the bottom. Now, because I use that thermal, I want to make sure that the thermal side is pointing towards the lining, so pointing toward the teapot. Right here is where it gets funky. You put down the rickrack and that bottom piece, and then you sew it. I suggest just sewing that bottom piece down first without the rickrack, and then putting the rickrack on there, and then putting this top layer on. I couldn't see where I was going. I wasn't 100% sure if my 1/4 inch seam was right. This rickrack is so thick and so big that I actually missed some pieces. So, yeah, just sew that the flower side, that flower panel, sew that down to the batting first, and then worry about the next two pieces. This is the lining. So after you sew that together, you go on ahead and throw that lining on top. And the directions will really help you with this. I'm just showing you how it goes together more so than trying to give you an exact tutorial on how to do it. But it's so helpful to see somebody put stuff together sometimes. Right now, I'm marking the slits for the casing. I find that after you mark the slits for the casings, watch, I'll show you. So I'm going to show you me sewing the casings together. You want to make sure that you go backward and forward and back tack where the casing openings are, because that's where you're going to be pulling and putting a bunch of tension on it. So I'm just going around the sides, back tacking at the casing part. And the casing is for that drawstring that makes it ruffle up really nice and cute at the top of the teapot. And then I'm going to just reduce bulk by cutting the corners at that stage. It says to do it earlier, but I liked it better at this stage after I finished sewing it down. And then I'm cutting off the excess rickrack and stuff and just cleaning it up. Now I'm getting ready to turn this inside out and make sure that I caught all of my edges. And I'm using a point turner or a purple thing. I really like that one more so for poking out edges and stuff, because that purple thing is plastic and it can bend. That one is a little bit more sturdy. I'm using some permanent glue just to pull back the casing part and glue it, because my 1/4 inch seams are not perfect right there, and I want to be sure that that opening remains open. So I just put a little bit of glue where that casing opening is. And now I'm turning it and sticking my finger in there to make sure that the casing side is open. And I'm just rolling the fabric between my fingers to try to get it all straight, and then I'm going to press it. See? Just trying to make sure that that little section is open and making sure that's straight. Clipping my threads. And look, there you go. And this is basically it right here. Now, for the casing, it tells you to go down 1 inch. Yeah, just find out where your casing openings are and draw lines from one side to the next. Don't be worried, because if your 1/4 inch seam was not perfectly a 1/4 inch, it might not work to sew it down 1 inch. You might be off. So just find out where those holes open on the sides and draw a line from one side of the hole to the other. Don't worry about if it's a diagonal. Don't worry about if it's not perfectly straight, because once you cinch it, you're not going to be able to tell. But you want to be sure that your ribbon, your tie, your trim, whatever you're putting through the casing can get all the way through. That's important. And so I found that if you just draw a line, just find out where your holes are and draw the line, it works out perfectly. I sure do love these colors. I'm saying that I'm giving this away, but really I'll probably just keep it. It's too cute. And I think I will do some for the seasons. Every time I go into Pink Sand Beach, they have a different cozy. And I'm like, what are they doing? You know what they're doing? They're changing them out for the seasons because they're fun to sew. So on the bottom, you're going to close it up with a zigzag stitch. I'm using my open toe foot so I can see what's going on here. And I'm just going through all the layers with the zigzag. If you have a serger, that's perfect. I don't have one. And I'm also taking the bottom pieces and I'm putting those wrong sides together, and I'm just going around those zigzagging. I'm not so worried about this being perfect because you really won't be able to see it when it's all sewn together. So we're going to go around that side and bam, all done. All the way around, zigzag stitch just to connect these together and kind of get those edges tidied up. Now, I don't sew straight. I've got stuff that's wonky, and so I'm just squaring up the two pieces. As long as they are the same height, you're fine. And if your teapot needs to be a little bit smaller, you might want to adjust how tall that is at that point right there. Just trim off the bottom excess part and keep going. So in the instructions, it says to do a large basting stitch with your sewing machine. The largest basting stitch that I can do is 5.0, and then you're supposed to be able to pull the bobbin thread and it's supposed to cinch. That thread broke the minute that I pulled it. It just was not having it. And I worked and I played with it and I fussed with it, trying to figure out how on earth I was going to get this cinched. I broke that thread, and I like connecting threads. I think they're pretty strong, but I see why sometimes in patterns it'll say use dental floss, because it doesn't break. They'll say use pearl cotton also because it just doesn't break. So I figured out, you know what? I'm just going to run my own basting stitch across the bottom. So I tied the sides and I did a very, very large basting stitch at the bottom, and I ruffled it myself at the bottom. Now with this ruffle, it doesn't tell you at what point to stop ruffling. So with the second one that I did, I made sure to pull it so that the bottom part measures about 5 inches. That's a 5-inch circle. And so I wanted it to go around half and then around the other half. So I cinched it to about 5 inches. And that made me very happy because right now I am pinning the circle to the bottom, and it's difficult. This part right here is not an exact science, but as long as you get that sucker attached, it's going to work. It doesn't feel like it's going to work, but it does end up working just fine. It's not cute. It's not pretty, but just go with it. And you think I should be sewing on a curve, and it really doesn't curve. It's more of a straight stitch right here for me. I've got a ton of pins in there. I'm just pushing down the ruffles and making sure that it's going through that bottom piece. And so I have the circle at the bottom. And this is the lining that I have on top. So the lining is on top. I am sewing it to the circle, and I'm just going around it. I've pinned it tons, but I'm not being extra careful about the ruffles or anything like that. I go forward and I back tack. You see that? That's not really cute at the bottom. It's not the cleanest thing that I've ever done, but it totally looks cute when you put it on your teapot. Now I'm grabbing a bodkin. You can grab a safety pin, just anything to help you get the thread through your casing. I have a couple different bodkins. I have this one that's flat completely, and then I have another one that has a big clamp on the back. You'll see me use that if you watch my other videos that are upcoming about finishing quilts, how to gift a quilt. So I'm just pulling this thread all the way through both sides. And you know, looking at it, it really does kind of look like the one in the store. I was being very hard on myself about that little circle, but it is what it is. Like I say, you get what you get and you do not throw a fit. Now this ribbon that I'm using is way too big for the casing. So the casing is supposed to be a 1/2 inch. Why do I have 5/8 inch ribbon? Not 3/8, but 5/8. Just messing with stuff. But since it's ribbon, I figured it could work. So I shoved it down in there. It did work. It's tight, but I shoved it down in there. And then you just primp it. And what? You're done. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I like it, and I hope you guys do too. It totally matches my mug rugs and stuff. All right, I'll see you guys on my next video. Bye-bye.